say a few words. So Rohit, would you mind doing the introduction?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Bob, and team at Linoma for organizing this webinar on secure and streamline your file transfers on our solution GoAnywhere. And I welcome everybody from the different regions who have joined us today this morning for the webinar, especially our partners in the APAC region. I really thank you for helping us to conduct this webinar. And Linoma is a health systems company now, and a lot of you may or may not be familiar with the health systems. You know, through this presentation, Bob will talk about our health systems as a company, as well as take you into the secure and streamline your file transfer solutions or requirements with our GoAnywhere product. So my role in APAC is a sales manager and channel manager, and I look forward to working with you all in coming weeks and months. But with that, Bob, I'll transfer back to you and let you take over and continue the presentation.
All right, great. Well, so thanks, Rohit. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Today's webinar, again, is on secure and streamline your file transfers. My name is Bob Libby, and I am the Chief Architect for Linoma Software. I've been in IT for 30 years and have spent the last decade in designing encryption and file transfer solutions. As a certified information security professional, I also consult with organizations how to best protect their sensitive data assets and achieve regulatory compliance. I'm joined by Steve Libby, who serves as our Director of Engineering, with expertise in developing managed file transfer and encryption solutions on a wide range of platforms, including Windows, Linux, and IBM i. Steve leads our GoAnywhere product development team, which is located here in the United States. During the webinar, Steve will be helping to address any specific technical questions you may have on this content. Also joining us is Dan Freeman, who is a senior solutions consultant here at Linoma. Dan has spent the last 10 years of his career in various security roles ranging from systems engineer to security officer. And also as a certified information professional, Dan has designed networks, systems, and procedures to ensure regulatory compliance using risk management frameworks and the HIPAA standards. So today's agenda is going to start by looking at the challenges many organizations are facing with their enterprise file transfers. Traditional tools and homegrown scripts are simply no longer viable options for keeping up with the latest business demands and security requirements. During this webinar, I will explain what managed file transfer is, otherwise just known as MFT, and why it's becoming so popular for organizations. I will explain the main benefits of MFT, including how it can be used to protect and automate your batch transfers, as well as how it can be used by end users as a secure alternative to email and file sharing services like Dropbox. We'll also discuss how managed file transfer solutions generate the detailed audit logs and alerts needed to comply with PCI DSS and other regulations. Dan will then give you a live demonstration of our new 5.5 version of our MFT solution called GoAnywhere and explain how it can help you to configure, secure, and audit all of your file transfers from a central dashboard. We'll have time at the end of the webinar to answer any remaining questions you may have. Again, feel free to enter any questions along the way, and we'll address them through the control panel. So just a quick background on our company, Linoma Software. We are based, again, in Nebraska, which is right in the middle of the United States, and we've been in business for over 20 years. We have made Inc. 5000's list as one of the fastest growing private companies for the last 4 years in a row. We are proud to achieve an almost 99% customer retention rate, which we believe is a testament to the excellent products and service we provide. Linoma is a division of Help Systems, which has over 500 employees and 10,000 customers around the world. And as a member of the PCI Security Council, we keep up to date with the latest standards and ensure our products stay compliant. So let's talk about the challenges that your organization may be facing with your file transfers. A lot of IT departments are using older technology and a variety of legacy tools to transmit files. And many companies don't have the good error alerts when transfers fail. Some have to wait for their trading partner to call to indicate that they did not receive the file. To add to these challenges, many end users are still sending files through unsecured email or cloud services like Dropbox without any controls or centralized management. And your organization may still be using PC-based tools to transfer files. And since this is often a manual process, it's prone to human error and great risk. So what if the user downloads or uploads the wrong file? Or what if it contains sensitive data and the user forgot to encrypt it before the transmission? And those are some of the some problems you may have with a PC tool. With many transfer tools, there's often no logs of where the files were sent, and this is becoming a real issue with auditors since many organizations cannot tell them what files are leaving the network. And because of these vulnerabilities, it's very difficult to meet strict compliance requirements using traditional file transfer tools and manual processes. In order to automate file transfers, many companies have built FTP scripts on their systems. However, these scripts have many downfalls. For instance, FTP scripts can only be written by programmers, which are a very expensive resource. And every time something changes for the trading partner, such as a new IP address or password or file name, you have to get a programmer involved to make those changes. And these costs can really add up over time and distract those programming resources from other projects. And a big problem with scripts is your trading partner's passwords are often stored in the clear right within the scripts, which can make those servers very vulnerable to attacks. And many scripts are very basic in nature, and we're not programmed to have advanced file transfer capabilities like auto-retry, auto-resume, alerts for failures, which is why a lot of organizations are looking for alternatives. So what is managed file transfer? Managed file transfer, also known as just MFT, is a solution that allows organizations to control and secure their file transfers through a centralized framework. MFT covers all aspects of file transfers within your enterprise and with your trading partners, including batch transfers between systems, as well as ad hoc file transfers between individuals. MFT provides the automation you need for your file transfers, protecting that data with strong encryption, while providing the audit trails you need for compliance with strict regulations. So with GoAnywhere, we believe it's the best enterprise level MFT solution in the marketplace. And here's a diagram that gives you a quick top-down view of its capabilities. GoAnywhere can be installed on almost any operating system, and all administration can be performed right through your browser. So let me just explain a little bit more about GoAnywhere from this diagram. So listed down below are all of the various protocols that are supported with GoAnywhere. Many companies need to transmit files over secure FTP. So we support sftp, which is FTP over SSH, SCP, which is secure copy, and FTPS, which is FTP over SSL or TLS tunnel. We also support standard FTP through the product if you still need to use that mechanism within for non-sensitive files. So all the different flavors of FTP are supported. GoAnywhere can also connect up to all of your various file systems within your network, as well as it includes cloud connectors for Amazon S3 and web dev services. GoAnywhere can also connect up to web services, including AS2. It can also do HTTPS posts and gets, and it can call out web services using SOAP and REST. So you can send XML or JSON documents to your trading partners and receive those documents back to parse to import into your applications. GoAnywhere can also tie into your backend database systems. So it can support a SQL Server, MySQL, DB2, and other databases, and it can interact through those databases through SQL. For instance, you could use GoAnywhere to do an extract from a database, and it can translate that data to different formats, including CSV, fixed with text, XML, Excel, or JSON file formats. It can also parse out those documents and import those into your databases. GoAnywhere can call out your backend applications as part of an overall workflow. So perhaps after a file has been transferred to your trading partner, you may want to call one of your applications to do additional processing on those files. And then finally, GoAnywhere can interact with your email servers to send out and retrieve emails from your trading partners. Now, if it was used to send out files through email, it can send those as traditional attachments, or we have what's called secure email, in which case it can strip the file attachment and it can instead send out a secure link to that file to your trading partner, and then they can simply click on that link to retrieve those files from your site. So GoAnywhere is going to include all these different connectors down below, and then you'll be able to set up workflows to interact with these various systems to allow it to push and pull information from those various servers. As part of the workflow, it can also encrypt and decrypt the files using open PGP standard, which is a very popular encryption standard used by many financial institutions. It also supports zip compression. We support the zip 2.0 standard, gzip, and tar for packaging and unpackaging files. Once you set up your workflows, you can run those several different ways. One way is we can schedule the transfers to run on either scheduled by the minute, by the hour, or certain days of the week, or certain days of the month. The scheduler can also be configured with custom holiday calendars where you can skip certain holidays, for instance, for your bank, and you can have those transfers instead run the day before or after. GoAnywhere can also run workflows by watching folders. So we can monitor a folder on an FTP or secure FTP server, or you could watch a folder on one of your local file systems or a cloud-based file system. And when files appear on those folders that meet your selection criteria, it can then run a workflow to process those files. And it's smart enough to know if the files are truly available. It can do what's called a secondary snapshot, in which it can check to see if the timestamp and the size of the file is changing. That way it won't try to access a file that's still being written to by your application. We also have commands and APIs for GoAnywhere that allows you to call out our workflows from your own applications. So you can call out a workflow from Windows, command line from Linux. We also have APIs for Java and .NET. And you can also make web services calls to GoAnywhere over either SOAP or Rust to integrate GoAnywhere with your applications. GoAnywhere also lets you let your trading partners connect up to you through sftp, FTPS, as well as HTTPS, so they could do both ad hoc and batch file transfers onto your system. So GoAnywhere can be used for both inbound and outbound file transfers. For ad hoc file transfers, we also have what's called secure forms, where you can actually prompt the trading partner for certain parameters when they upload the files. Perhaps you would like to prompt them for the country or their identification or some other parameters. They can enter that information along with the file, and that information would then be sent to you through a workflow that you could then import to a database or do other processing with those form fields. GoAnywhere has a very nice partner management system built into the product, so your user accounts can be authenticated against Active Directory or LDAP or against the GoAnywhere internal database. It also supports third-party authentication using SAML and other authentication techniques, especially if you need two-factor authentication. Now, alerts can be sent when any kinds of problems occur. So, for instance, maybe you're having troubles connecting to your trading partner. GoAnywhere has built-in auto retry. It can keep trying that trading partner for a period of time, and you can set the maximum number of attempts. But if it continues to fail, GoAnywhere can send out an email or a text message or a syslog message to let you know what the problem is with that particular server it's trying to communicate with. And finally, all communications are logged within our central database. So no matter if it's an inbound or outbound, ad hoc or batch file transfer, that's all going to go into the database. Now, GoAnywhere does ship with its own database called Derby, which is an open source database. But you can also use SQL Server, Postgres, MySQL, DB2, or Oracle as your backend database server. And we have a migration wizard to allow you to use your own database. That way you can use your own backup tools to back up our configurations and other information. Just a few more things, and then we'll turn things over to Dan for the live demo. So GoAnywhere can be deployed to multiple platforms. And so here's that list here. Again, you can use it for batch and ad hoc file transfers. As I had mentioned, all transfers are audited. And you can use that browser-based interface for all administration and monitoring. There's no desktop client required to work with the product. Here is the list of your inbound services that GoAnywhere supports. We have the key management built in to let you work with your PGP keys, your SSH keys, and certificates. So you do not need to use a separate tool to work with your keys and certificates in the product. GoAnywhere can be configured to automatically encrypt files at rest as well as in motion. Now at rest encryption, you can designate certain folders. For instance, maybe when your trading partners drop off files on your system, those files can be automatically encrypted with AES 256-bit encryption, which is a very strong form of encryption. And when those files are later accessed by an authorized user or application, it can automatically decrypt those files for you. You can set up multiple administrators in GoAnywhere, and each administrator can have different levels of permissions. So for instance, you can allow some administrators to only look at audit logs. Others can set up new trading partners. Others will be able to set up new workflows. And so there's about 13 different levels of permissions you can grant to each user in the system. A couple things here. You can use GoAnywhere as a replacement to Dropbox, Box, and other file sharing services. So it really has a lot of great end-user file collaboration tools within it. You can custom brand our web interface with your own logo, your own privacy policy, so it looks like a very nice custom application. As I mentioned, we have the secure mail piece to let you send out secure email links, and that does include an Outlook plugin, so you can simply attach a file through Outlook, hit the send button, will then strip the file off of the email and store that encrypted form and send out the secure link to your trading partner. As I mentioned, we support several different forms of two-factor authentication, which are listed here. GoAnywhere does have a DMZ gateway you can put in your DMZ, and that gateway will act as a reverse proxy. So when your customers come in to access their files, they can first hit the gateway. The gateway will then proxy that connection over this proprietary control channel into your private network. Now that control channel is actually open up from the private network to the DMZ at startup time, and it's kept alive at all times. So you do not need to open up any inbound ports into your private network. And since your SFTP server will now live in your private network, no files need to be stored in your DMZ. All the files can be stored in that private network area. So the auditors are very pleased with this approach because you're keeping those files out of the DMZ in your private network with no inbound ports. GoAnywhere allows you to assign multiple run priorities to your jobs. It also supports clustering that allows you to have multiple systems running at the same time, and if one of those systems was to fail, the other systems in the cluster can continue to process your transactions. GoAnywhere also supports file transfer acceleration, which allows you to send very large files very quickly by breaking those files into multiple chunks, and then it can reassemble the files on the receiving end using our proprietary technology. So what's new in version 5.5? In 5.5, we came out with a new concept called agents, where you can now install agents on all of the various systems that you would like to communicate with. And then these agents can interact with GoAnywhere to, in which case they can be used to transfer files between those agent systems and the GoAnywhere central server. And you can also run workflows on those agents to maybe zip up files, to parse the files, and do other business process on those files as you need to. The transfers can be scheduled, and you can also have monitors running on those systems. So for instance, you could be watching a Windows server for new files, and when those files are found, those files can then be transferred up to GoAnywhere, or the files could be transferred to another system on your network automatically. With the agents, alerts can be sent if there's any kinds of problems running workflows, and all agent activity is going to be audited in the central GoAnywhere MFT marketplace, MFT system. Agents can be run within your internal network, but you can also install agents on your remote systems. For instance, you may have franchises or satellite locations where you need to easily transfer files back and forth securely. So you can install these agents on those systems. You could also install agents at your trading partners and in cloud environments to easily send files back and forth between those systems. So here's a list of all the different types of tasks that you can perform on agents today. So this is going to give you most of those capabilities that you'll need to work with files, to monitor, to secure those file transfers, to compress and decompress those files and translate. And you can even run native commands on those systems based on their authorities. The management of all the agents can be done through a single interface. So you'll be able to work with all of your files no matter where they're located at within the world. You'll be able to install those agents and communicate with those agent systems to run those workflows. Agents can be grouped together, so you can actually have multiple agents all running the same set of tasks. And again, all auditing will be centralized, so you'll be able to go to one place to see all activity on those agent systems. GoAnywhere can authenticate with those agents using X.509 certificates, and all communications is encrypted through SSL. So when the agent connects up to the GoAnywhere system, that will be over an encrypted tunnel to send those files to you, or for you to send those files out to those agent systems. We can also roll out upgrades out to those agents whenever those updates do come available. So that is something new that we came out in version 5.5, and that's very useful if you need to, especially easily move files between your system and other remote systems. And for instance, maybe they don't have access to one of the standard protocols like sftp or other popular file transfer protocols. Those agents can be used to automate those processes. So I'm going to let Dan give you an overview of GoAnywhere, and so he's going to just kind of start from the beginning, show you the dashboard, show you some things that you can do with the product. And Dan, are you on the call?
I am here, Bob.
Okay, great. So I'm going to make Dan the presenter, and he is going to give the live demo.
Okay, can you guys see my screen okay?
Yep, looks good.
Awesome, great. Thanks, Bob. Good overview. All right, what we're seeing here is the login page to the admin portal of the GoAnywhere MFT product. You'll notice this is browser-based, so no client installation is needed to manage the product. Throughout this demo, I'm going to be using the Chrome browser, but you can be using Firefox, IE, Opera, whatever your preference is. This particular instance that we're going to look at throughout the demo is going to be based on a Linux platform, but as Bob mentioned earlier, we can install this virtually on any operating system of your choice, whether Windows, IBM, AIX, Novell, etc. This actual instance, since the name here is a GasProd 1, it is one instance of two in an actual clustered environment to kind of simulate our active high availability system. I'm going to log in to the product with my administrator user account, and my user account does have all the admin roles, so I'm going to be able to leverage all the features throughout the product. We do have 16 different granular admin role-based access depending on what rights are needed and given kind of facilitate that job separation of duties for the admin roles. Okay, so when you first log in, you're going to come to your dashboard. This is a nice, clean, graphical way to kind of show you what's going on with the system at any time. You can customize your dashboard by adding any of the one of 25 different gadgets out there by clicking on it. So this is kind of look at some of the service status here is one. We'll kind of look at the actual service, see if it started, and actually look at some of the active sessions. You could click on here to kind of look at some more details. Or maybe you want to see maybe some recently blacklisted IP addresses for kind of like your denial of service or your malicious users trying to log in with common user accounts like root and admin. This is my dashboard, but we do have like common dashboards, whether by department, team. We also have maybe an activity dashboard to kind of show you the actual activity that's going on within the system. So maybe you see some jobs that are running on, kind of see your peaks and valleys, and maybe some opportunities where you can spread those jobs out to kind of be a little bit better efficient within the system. So let's go ahead and jump back into my dashboard, and we'll kind of take advantage of these quick links. Now this quick links gadget will kind of give us a chance to define some of the most commonly used components within the GoAnywhere MFT suite. Now, starting with resources, this is our way to define that connection information to other servers and services that GoAnywhere can leverage. This is where GoAnywhere kind of acts as a client to connect out to other servers like FTP, SFTP, databases, SSH, and many other types of servers within your organization, as well as servers defined at maybe your trading partner sites as well. These resources contain things like usernames, passwords, IP addresses, and any information needed to make that successful connection. Once those resources are properly defined, you can leverage them for use and reuse throughout the product and specifically within projects. Now, projects are a workflow definition. At a high level, this is kind of where you specify what to do with your data, utilizing tasks defined to move, store, and manipulate data to meet your business requirements. Now, all projects can be initiated in a multitude of ways. We'll kind of see them interactively run throughout this demo, as well as automated. And some of those automated methods are through the schedulers, your triggers, and monitors. Now, we do have a built-in scheduler to kick off certain projects, or you can use your own enterprise scheduler like Robot, Cisco Title, Windows Scheduler, or anything else that you have available. Triggers are going to be based off user interaction. So for instance, if a web user uploads a file via maybe secure folders or perhaps SFTP, that can kick off a project, maybe send an email, copy that file, delete that file, do anything to initiate whenever those user actions are performed. And then we have monitors that kind of monitor the file system for any kind of newly created, modified, or deleted data, as well as even maybe just notifying when a file simply exists within a specified folder location to go ahead and kick off a project. Now, GoAnywhere does have two different types of users. We do have admin users, and that's currently how I'm logged in now. These users are going to be used to administer and configure the system, while our web users are going to be those users that log into the system to leverage those services offered up by GoAnywhere, whether that's your HTTPS, AS2, FTP, FTPS, SFTP, any of those services that are offered. Now, these can be internal employees as well as external partners that need to share, upload, and download files within your organization. Audit logs, very important. GoAnywhere does audit all web user activity as well as the file transfer activity within the product and all its associated services. Furthermore, all administrator user activity is logged as well, so we can see what changes are done, when they're done, and by what admin user. Now, audit and accountability is very critical in any regulatory compliance that you need to adhere to, no matter what industry you're in. Now, we can take these detailed audit logs to generate PDF reports to the system activity and usage. Now, these can be generated automatically, maybe to appropriate staff, or maybe who administer the system, or maybe on a scheduled basis to upper management to kind of give them a snapshot of what's going on. Completed jobs, now we are going to be auditing on an individual project basis. Every project that runs creates a unique job ID that you can always view in the job details as needed. And GoAnywhere also does have an enterprise-grade job queue management system. Now, this can allow for prioritization of jobs. Let's say, for instance, we do have certain SLAs. Well, those jobs can be set with high priorities, whereas other jobs have normal or maybe low priority set. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the resources. And again, this is us acting as a client. This is us dipping into other servers and services that we can leverage. Some of the common resources that we see a lot of resources here. We can leverage, maybe you want to offload some of your data to an object, unlimited storage. We can leverage those Amazon S3 buckets. I think it's noteworthy to talk about that we are Drummond certified, so we can act as both maybe client and server on any kind of EDI type transfer, AS2 transfers. But a couple of common resources I'd like to talk about is maybe the database server, whether or not we're actually wanting to extract data from a database that we have, package it up and send it out, or we're actually receiving data from a customer. We're going to go ahead and read that file, however it's sent to us, and go ahead and enter that into a customer database. So let's take a look at a quick database resource. We come prepackaged with the JDBC drivers, all the common ones, whether IBMI, Apache Informix, MySQL, SQL. So go ahead and select the one that you're going to choose. The JDBC URLs, usually not the most intuitive thing in the world. So if you don't know what it is, click on the ellipsis. Again, select your driver that you are going to connect to. Put in the host name, hit generate URL, and you're going to go ahead and, we'll go ahead and generate that URL for you. And then have that user and password that can actually be authorized to do any kind of SQL statements within that database. Now, every resource that you do define will have a test button. This is kind of your sanity check that everything you enter actually does work. It's going to do a couple things. One, it's going to check that network connectivity to make sure that you do have access to that resource. And two, it's going to check and see if you are actually authorized with the account that you selected actually has access to get to that resource. Resource test was successful is always a good thing. So let's go ahead and hit done here. A lot of other resources here. Don't have a whole lot of time to go over those. We'll kind of hit another one, SSH servers, in particular the SFTP service. Again, when we add these here, we'll add a host IP address. We'll look at the port that they're actually listening on, a valid username and password. The connection tab, we can actually have a little bit of a certified or a little bit of reliance on the delivery by having connection retry attempts. So for instance, here we're having 5 retry attempts with 10 seconds interval in between each one. So let's say we're running a job late at night, it goes through, for whatever reason, a router reboots, computer reboots, and we lose that connection, we're going to retry 5 times, and if we do reconnect that session successfully, we'll pick up where we left off as opposed to retransmitting the entire file. Now, if we exhaust all our resources or all our retries, then we'll go into our error handling, whether we send out an email, maybe an SMS message, or an SNMP trap to go ahead and handle that error correction. Here with the SSH keys, if you want to, again, this is us acting as a client connecting to a server. So if you want to request that actual public portion of the SSH key, so you can validate that you're actually connecting who you think you're connecting to. In this case, in this resource, we do have a private key file. So this is us creating an SSH key pair, exporting our public key to send to our partner. They will associate it with our user ID, so then we can match up our private key to that public key for that authorization. Speaking of keys, GoAnywhere is a full-blown key management system, not only just the SSH key manager that we just kind of talked about, but also PGP type encryption for your data encryption and SSL certificates. We can also decipher what algorithms we want to use, whether ciphers or key exchange. I think it's worthy to note that we do have a FIPS 140-2 compliance module. If this is selected, then only those NIST validated cipher suites and algorithms will be available for you to choose. And then every resource that we do have available does have a contacts tab, not required, but it's really kind of handy to kind of put in the contact information of the person that's responsible for that resource in case things change, break, or whatever. Again, we'll hit the test, make sure everything's good, we're good to go. Okay, so now that we've got our resources set, let's go ahead and jump into the workflow, in particular our projects. The first thing we're going to see here is kind of our Projects Explorer. We have what we have here is our top-level domains. So domains within GoAnywhere is kind of our logical separation for what resources are available to certain users depending upon what domains they are part of, as well as file permissions on these folders here. So you can see that I have access to all these domains, but yet I don't have the file permissions for development, sales, and marketing. So just a couple ways you can kind of keep that separation and security. So let's jump into a couple projects. The first project we're going to jump into is a very simple SFTP put single file. But the first thing we want to do is kind of get a little bit of familiarity with the project designer window. We've got 4 separate little windows here. First one's a component library. These are going to be over 100 tasks that we have available to you. And these, depending upon what you actually want to do within the project, you can select, say we want to do a copy. You can either double click or drag it right into the project outline. Now that project outline is simply just that. It's going to be kind of our sequential outline of the project that we have going. And it's going to go in sequential order. So once one task is done, it's going to go to the next. Our actual workspace pane here is going to be our attribute window, or how we define the actual component library or task that we selected for the project outline. So for this SFTP put, we've got a source file and a destination file to kind of define that actual task. And then we have variables over here. We have system variables as well as project variables, output variables, and user-defined variables, which we'll kind of look at here in a second. Okay, so getting back to the project, the actual project is going to have a main module. And here, the main module, we'll kind of know that the modules are kind of your set procedures or function to logically organize a project into set tasks. So we kind of see here we have tasks underneath this module. So the first task that we have in this project, we're going to connect up to an SFTP resource. Now this drop-down is going to be populated by the resources that we defined just a little bit ago. So we're going to select our resource. We do have subtasks, whether you want to get, put, delete, move. In this instance, we're actually going to do a put file. We're going to grab a single file, source file, and we're going to go ahead and place it in this inbound directory. We're going to change the name of the file to orders, and then also use our variable nomenclature here, which is defined by $ curly brace, followed by a function current date, and then year, month, and day. We can do that by hitting this variable. We kind of look at this expression wizard using our system variables functions that we kind of use the current date. We can always use concatenation, string, substring, as well as math operators and comparison operators to kind of get really granular and sophisticated with that. If all goes well, we're going to go ahead and archive that file off. And this is a simple copy command. So take that original file and copy it over to here. Now you'll notice this next thing is an errors module. If we go through the project, we'll see it even at the project level, the module level, as well as the individual task level, we have this on error module. So anything that goes wrong at the module or individual task level, we can call an actual errors module. So if anything goes wrong, what we're going to do is we're going to send out an email to maybe an administrator, and then we'll attach the actual system job log, which is one of our system variables, so that if something does go wrong, it goes to that administrator, they don't need to log into the system. They can just view that system job log. So let's go ahead and execute this project. We can view the job log, and we'll see that we connected up to our SFTP resource. We uploaded a file. You'll notice the actual file name was changed to orders and put the current date in there. We closed that FTP connection, and then we did an archive, which is basically a copy task, and then we closed out the project. So a pretty simple project. Let's go ahead and move on to another project that's going to introduce a couple other components to projects within the GoAnywhere product. This one here is going to reach out to an FTPS resource, pull down some files using the get command, encrypt them via PGP, sftp them up to a partner, send a confirmation email, and also execute a native command. So here, a lot of times within GoAnywhere, we're going to do a lot of different manipulation within a project, whether it's compressing, decompressing, encrypting, decrypting. So we kind of want to have a temporary workspace for all that to happen. And that's where this create workspace and associated delete workspace kind of comes in handy. We can have that temporary workspace as well as kind of our auto cleanup after we're done. So here, we're going to connect up to that resource. Again, this time we're going to use a get command. And instead of a single file, we're actually going to add a file set. So now we're actually going to define a base directory, which looks like it's going to be the root directory of that FTPS resource. Recursive set to false means it's not going to check any subdirectories underneath there. We do have filter options here. We're going to do a wildcard filter, and we're going to search for anything a .txt file. We could use regular expressions to get a little bit more granular and more complex file extensions, or we can use date to say anything over than 30 days, go ahead and pull down, or size anything larger than a gigabyte, pull down. Now here's a new concept as well. This is where we're leveraging that temporary directory. So our destination directory is going to be our system job workspace, which is our system variable correlating to that temporary workspace that we created. Also here, we're going to take everything that we downloaded from that file set, and we're going to put it into a variable called files. In a lot of cases within GoAnywhere in these projects, any output variable from one task is going to be the input source from to another task, and we'll see that in just a second. We're also going to keep count of the number of downloaded files that we actually downloaded. So now when we go to this next step, we're going to have an if statement saying, hey, if file count is greater than 0, basically saying, did we actually download some files? Let's go ahead and complete these next action items. Now this if statement is one way to do it. We could also do some loops. So if we wanted to, we could do like maybe a for each loop. So for each every file that we downloaded, go ahead and complete some tasks. But in this case, we're going to use an if statement. So the encrypt files task, again, this is where we're going to pull in that output from the FTPS download files. That output directory is now going to be our source for their inputs. We're going to input all the files that were pulled down. Again, going to put them in that system temporary workspace. Now we're going to add a public key. This is whoever we're sending the files to. They must have sent their public key to us. We're going to encrypt those files with their public key so that they can decrypt them with their private key. You could also add a secret key. This is going to be for digital signatures. This would be us putting this our private key on here, exporting our public key, giving it to them so they can actually know that the files sent to them were actually sent from us. And again, you're going to see this concept. The output variables of this task are going to a PGP files, and you'll see these output variables being auto-created over here. So now on the next task, the SFTP, our source files variable is going to be that variable, the PGP files. We're going to put it in the root directory of our SFTP directory, and we're going to prepend the actual files with the current date task, as you've kind of seen. Now again, if you actually forget the nomenclature or the syntax of that, you can always take these output files and just drag and drop them right on in there. So once that's done, we're going to send an email. We're going to execute a native command. And then if we do have any problems within here, we're going to hit the error module, similar to the last one. But with this one, we're going to send an email as well as maybe a text message. So let's go ahead and execute this command. So again, we're going to do an FTPS get, pull down some files, encrypt in PGP, SFTPM up to our partner, send an email, and execute a native command. So let's look at that here. So we're going to the FTPS connection. We're going to download everything that's a TXT file. Looks like we grabbed 8 of them. We're going to open up that public key to encrypt them. We're going to encrypt all those files. Again, we're going to encrypt all 8 of those files here. Then we're going to actually go ahead and SFTP them up to our partner. Again, we're going to see we're going to prepend them with the current date. And then we're going to go close that, send the email. We were going to execute that native command, but that the condition was not met. So we went through that, deleted the workspace, and that project is done. So again, we'll go ahead and look at another one. For the ones that we've looked at, we've kind of looked at projects that have actual files to move. Sometimes we actually want to pull information from maybe a database. So for this one, we're actually going to use that, leverage into a database, do a select statement, pull files out, write them to Excel, PGP encrypt them, and again, SFTP them out to a trading partner. Now with this one here, we're going to, like I mentioned, leverage that database from a resource. We're going to do a select statement, pull out all this information for employees. Now we're going to have a where clause saying where wages are greater than this variable called minimum salary. Now this is also another function here. These are going to be project variables. And these are going to be user defined. So we have this minimum salary variable here that we define with an initial value of 25,000. We also have a records found variable with an initial value of true. So we go to that query, anything that where wages is greater than the 25,000, let's go ahead and pull out that output to a data variable, again, an output variable. If nobody makes over 25,000 and gets any records out here, we're going to set that records found variable to false. When we get to our if block statement, we're going to see if records are true. We're going to go ahead and create that Excel file. Again, you're going to see that common theme. The output from that query statement is now an input for this statement. We're going to write to employees XLS file. We're going to kind of dress it up a little bit, give it a sheet name of employees, as well as include the column headers. And again, there's that output files variable. So now when we go to the PGP encrypt task, we have that output variable. We're going to give it a PGP intersection, add the public key, make that the output variable as PGP files. And we're going to go ahead and take that source files as the output from the previous task and send it up to this sftp directory. Email confirmation, go ahead and delete the workspace to clean up our jobs. And then if there were any problems, let's go ahead and send out an email. So now we're going to run this project with that initial value of 25,000, see what happens here. So we rerun that. It looks like that SQL statement pulled out 974 records. Now with this one, with those project variables, we can actually run those in advanced mode. So we can manipulate those variables at runtime. So let's go ahead and say, hey, you know what? I want to find out how many people have or are making more than $90,000 a year and do that same project. And instead of 974 records, now we have 172 records. So this is the kind of way for having those defined project variables where you can pass in other variables to where we can reuse these projects for other tasks, which is kind of nice. Okay, so that's a quick look at some of the projects. Now, how do we kick these projects off? Well, we have the scheduler, kind of what Bob talked about. We'll define our project here. A schedule can be one time, minute, hourly, daily, weekly. We can have the holiday calendar that you define, and if those schedules land on those days, you can either skip previous, next business day, as well as built-in email notifications. So if that job fails, let's go ahead and email the administrator and go ahead and attach the job log to the email so they can see why that happened. We also have monitors. This is where we're going to do our file monitoring. We can do local network shares. We can also dip into FTP, FTPS, as well as sftp resources. We can monitor this directory. We're going to look for newly created or modified files with an EDI extension in between 9 and 10 every 15 seconds, Monday through Friday. And we're going to go ahead and kick off this project. Now again, this is where we see that anything that fits that criteria is going to be thrown into a files variable, which can be passed into that project. And then lastly, we've got triggers. And this is where that's going to be that web user or user initiated activity. Probably one of the most popular ones is upload successful. So let's say we're monitoring for any service. You could choose selected services, whether it's HTTPS or FTPS. You'll have conditions on that. So if you know you're looking for a certain web user named distributor and they're looking for it to go into this physical location, if both those are met, then we're going to go ahead and execute this native command called process.bat. We could also call a project as we've seen before. We can copy the file, rename it, or actually just send an email to kind of alert people that, hey, this partner has dropped off a file. So that kind of concludes a little bit of the client side or workflow section. Before I move into the server or services side, Bob, is there any questions out there that need to be answered?
No, I think you addressed a lot of those. Did you talk much about the key management aspect of it? Someone had asked how you would import a PGP key. Is there functions to let you do that?
Yeah, so if you go into our encryption module and open PGP Key Manager, you can simply just hit the import button here, and if you get that obviously from the partner that's going to be in a file, you can choose the file and import it straight from wherever you land that file, and then that key will be available to you. Great,
great. And you can create keys from there as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Great, great. Thanks.
Okay, cool. So let's jump into the server side of things. This is where we're going to act as a server, of course. And this is where we've got all kinds of different listeners here, whether it's HTTPS, AS2, all the flavors of FTP, GoFast, as well as agents. These are going to be listening 24/7 for connections into our network. Now most of these are going to be configurable mostly for just kind of listening for the actual port that it's going to be listening on, as well as maybe an SSL or maybe an SSH key association. The HTTPS tab or service listener does have a web client branding, so you can kind of give that company look and feel as well as a disclaimer message appropriate to what your organization is looking for. Once those listeners are set up, this is where we leverage our web users. Now these can be internal employees as well as trading partners and customers. So we'll go ahead and I'll kind of look at my current web user account. So the authentication, we can use the GoAnywhere system for your authentication, but you can also leverage Active Directory, IBMI, LDAP, or RSA Ready, as well as authentication types per service. So for the HTTPS service, AS2, you can do username and password, certificate, public key, or you can do dual authentication for both of them. Once you have that done, you can give out the protocols that they have access to, as well as certain features within the product. Once they get authenticated into the system, you can kind of direct them where they have access to. Now we do support virtual folders, so this can be anything from CIF shares, UNC Pass, Linux, Unix mounts, even Amazon S3 buckets, whatever we have access to, we can actually point them to those directions. And then we can give those granular permissions within each folder. Now you can also not only give them permissions to the system, but maybe you only want them to log in when they're at their place of work, so you can do IP filtering. Then time limits is kind of nice for maybe, say, contractors that are maybe on a 90-day basis. You can expire those accounts in 90 days. Or maybe you're leveraging self-service or self-registration accounts for ad hoc users, and you don't want those accounts kind of be laying around. You can disable them after a certain amount of inactivity. So a couple cool features there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and log into the web interface to kind of show you some of the features from the HTTPS protocol. So this is going to be my web interface, and the first thing I'm going to look at is secure folders. And it looks like I timed out, so let's go ahead and log in here. So again, it's going to go to this dashboard, and whatever you have access to, this is what's going to pop up. So again, secure folders is going to be kind of that same look and feel as a traditional FTP client with a folder structure. You can do just a regular upload, kind of a traditional upload here, or you can do kind of your seamless, which I think is kind of nice. Oops. Seamless drag and drop, pull those things right in here. It just says just let go, go ahead and let it go. And there you go, it copies it right up in there. Now to download, you can select multiple files and hit download, and this will actually zip them up, or you can do individual files and actually pull them down individually. And even so, you can do encrypted files. Now we do have targeted encrypted folders, and these are selected as targeted folders that are encrypted. Anything put in this encrypted folder will be AES 256-bit encrypted on your internal network. So going to GoDrive, GoDrive does have that same look and feel kind of as secure folders with the folder structure, the same upload button, the same seamless drag and drop to copy files in, but it has additional collaboration features to facilitate that productivity between employees and or trading partners. We do have a built-in media viewer. This is going to look at any kind of picture files. We can also look at PDF files as well. You can kind of do a quick view here. You can download, delete, send to, or share with right from there. We do also have a couple features here as far as collaboration goes. We can do a file lock, similar to like a Microsoft SharePoint where you check out a file. If you want to edit a file and lock the file so nobody else can edit it, pull it down, make your revisions, and go ahead and upload it back in there. When you do upload a file back in there, it's not going to pre-pen that actual name, but it's actually going to make it a revision. So you can look at your revision history as well as restore certain revisions if you want to. You can also share files or folders. You'll notice that with the actual green icon lit up or the little two-guy icon here. You can manage folder access straight from there. So if you want to change maybe the manager role access from editor to maybe viewer, contributor, editor, or owner, you can do that straight from here. Or if you actually just want to remove access from that user, you can go ahead and do that as well. And then we have a little section here, a little comment section. You can make comments on certain folders, and we've got demo comments are fun. That's really witty. So you can do some quick little comments there for other collaboration. I think one of the coolest features with the GoDrive is the actual sync client. Now this can be on Windows or Mac desktops as well as iOS, iPads, and Android for your mobile devices. Now this is when you install this on your device, it's going to map a G drive. Well, that's by default. You can change this if you want it to be a different letter. But this is going to put an actual drive that looks like it's on your local desktop. So So now we have bidirectional syncing. So if I go into the demo folder here and look at the demo folder within my G drive, you'll see we have rename and testing file, or tesing. That's really a bad spelling there. But anyway, so if we do an actual rename here, let's go ahead and rename this file to test. And we'll see if we refresh here, that's changed it to test. And then we can also do maybe a delete here. So go ahead and trash that file. We'll get that notification right here. And then we'll also see that file is gone. Well, it's also cool, again, kind of with most of like a Dropbox or anything, we do have a trash bin to where you can do restores. So let's go ahead and restore that file there. So we see that back in our demo file, hopefully. We see them back in here. And if we go in here, we see that test file back into our actual local file. One thing to note with GoDrive, everything that goes into GoDrive is actually encrypted at rest using AES 256-bit encryption, as well as your local G drive. So if your laptop is lost, stolen, blah, 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 these will actually be encrypted 256-bit encryption, as well as there's admin device manager stuff that we can do to where we can actually do a remote wipe. So definitely protected there. Okay, let's move on to secure mail. Secure mail, another ad hoc way for us to securely transfer files back and forth. You'll see that it does have a familiar interface, kind of like Outlook. Speaking of Outlook, we do have a plugin. So if you do install the plugin, you'll have these three little icons here, so where you can send secure mail directly from Outlook. So secure mail is a good way to obviously send things securely, but also file size does not matter. So with a lot of organizations, like if you're an exchange organization, you do have file limitations, file size limitations. So this is going to actually strip off the email and the any attachments, going to put it into a packages directory, which is, by the way, on your internal network and AES 256-bit encrypted at rest. And it's going to send out a unique URL for people to go ahead and just click on to come back into your network over that HTTPS protocol to securely download files. So it's a good way to centrally manage not only the sensitive information that you're sending, but also there's no consideration for large files. So let's go ahead and say that we're going to send out an email. So we do have a few options that we can do. And again, the actual message is going to be encrypted as well. So you can send PHI, PAI, any kind of sensitive information you want. We can do a read receipt where actually when they open it, you will get a read receipt, whereas Outlook usually, they kind of click no and you never know if they actually read it. Let's go ahead and send here. Give a couple other options. Let's password protect it. Let's not include it in email. Let's allow reply. This will allow them to reply to the message using that same HTTPS secure protocol. So let's go ahead and send that. This here is going to be that 10-digit alphanumeric password. You can either copy that and paste it into a new email, or you can call them and to tell them what the actual password is. They're going to get that URL link. They'll provide that password, and you get into the actual file. So easy way for you to send files securely over that secure email. One of the last things we're going to show here is secure folders. I'm sorry, secure forms. Secure forms. Remember that project that we did? We kind of entered in that minimum salary range. So this is one way that maybe you can give your users a way to actually generate a report via a variable that you put in. So again, we'll put in the 90,000. Oops, not 900,000. We probably won't get any results there. So this is an ad hoc way for you to let customers go to a website, enter in information, and either update your database, do whatever you want to with that data, or get a return value. So here we're going to submit this. It's going to go through, go into the backend database, pull out that query, and give you that employee PDF and show you all the people that make over $90,000 a year. Similarly, we can go to the another form. Let's go back. And this is more of a kind of a food selection, basically kind of like an RSVP. So this is where we can have a user kind of go in, put in their first name, last name. Let's see, we're going to eat some sea bass, noodle salad. Who doesn't like pumpernickel cake? And so when they hit submit, this is going to go back in. You're going to enter this into your database to get your RSVPs done. And then what's going to kick back is it's going to say, basically reiterate what they ordered and say, hey, by the way, here's a file containing the list of items to bring and the directions to the event. So a lot of really cool ways that you can leverage secure forms to either have users come in, enter in data so that you can leverage in the backend database, or for them to grab a generated report and avoid kind of dealing with an administrator and asking them to generate their report. One of the last things, I know I'm kind of running out of time here, that we'll kind of look at, and Bob touched on this, is the agents. Now, agents is our kind of way of deploying out to remote servers, kind of like a headless version of what we're looking at here today, the MFT version. So here we can kind of push those out. We have, what's really cool is we have central management of all these agents that are out in these remote locations. Now, this is really key for administering. So if we want to push out updates, configuring, as well as logging, which is very important to have that central logging of all things that happen to your remote systems through these agents. Now, all communication is done over that SSL, TLS encrypted channels. So now, instead of just running resources, projects, monitors, jobs in the main MFT instance, you can now distribute those out to remote systems. So here we'll kind of look at an instance here. Hopefully, yep, it's online. EC2 instance out in AWS. So this is an agent that we installed out in an EC2 instance out in AWS. So we can go out here. We can add a resource here, a database server. Kind of pull this up. We'll add our actual driver, jdbc URL, just like we saw before, username and password. Now, when we're hitting a test here, this is actually on the main MFT instance. So what this is going to do is pack up all that configure information, send it out to the agent for it to do its actual test to make sure that it's actually valid. And of course, it comes back successful, so we're good to go there. Similar to projects, we can create those projects here, package those up, and send those out to the agents. So now that we can do those actual projects on the local agent machines. So it's kind of like, instead of having where we can go out and leverage an sftp resource to monitor a folder and pull things down, agents are a way to have that headless version of MFT to monitor all those local resources or leverage the database resources and things like that to pull things down. This here is a local project, and this is a very simple one. We're leveraging that resource we just talked about, and it's basically doing just a create table to that resource. Scheduler, same kind of deal. We can do schedule maintenance as far as putting the projects to kick off projects on a scheduled basis. Monitors here. So say, for instance, we have a lot of satellite locations, and we're waiting for files to get processed. We can monitor local files within that network or that satellite location to kick off an actual GoAnywhere MFT project to pull those files from those agent locations back into GoAnywhere, or I should say the home base, to do any kind of file processing. And then jobs, here we go. We've got all the jobs here, those unique IDs for those projects that we can kind of look at. Last thing real quick that we'll kind of look at is the auditing. And let me exit out of here. So logs, like we talked about, like Bob talked about, the auditing accountability is very crucial. We do have service logs for every service that we have available that you can kind of go into. The HTTPS one we'll kind of look at. We've got a lot of services that we looked at here, whether we created a package, downloaded, submitted forms. We can kind of dive into those, as well as the really robust searching capabilities by either selecting the module, if you actually want to search by PGP files, contains, begins with, ends with, user accounts, to kind of get that Google type search here. Now these actual audit logs will generate reports. We've got 24 different CAN reports, whether you want to look at web user activity or disk usage. There's a lot of different reports out here, but one of the most popular ones is that security settings audit report. And this kind of goes through and takes a snapshot of 75 different security settings as far as your GoAnywhere MFT installation is concerned. We'll give you either a passed or failed. If you failed, we're going to give you recommendations on mitigation steps, and then map it to that PCI DSS section. So that's a pretty popular report for people to run to kind of see where they're at with their configuration. Yeah, that's kind of the quick overview.
All
Bob?
right, great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, you covered a lot of territory. I know we're getting to the bottom of the hour, so I'm going to take back control here. I would like to mention, and thank you, Dan. So I would like to mention a little more about our clustering environment, so you can actually have 2 or more copies of GoAnywhere running concurrently, both working off the same shared database system, same shared file system. And the gateway can then act as a load balancer for those systems. So when your traffic comes in from the outside internet, they could hit the gateway. The gateway is going to then distribute that traffic over 2 or more systems within that clustered environment. If one of those systems was to go down, GoAnywhere will become aware of that, the gateway, and it will just send sessions to those remaining systems within the cluster. Okay, so let me just bring up the installation requirements here. So everything that Dan showed you today, you can try out within your own environment. And so if you're running on, let's say, a Linux or Windows environment, it's going to take 375 mega disk space, 512 mega memory to install the product. That's for the base installation requirements. If you're on an IBM i system, you need to be on v7r1 or higher. It will take about 275 mega of disk space and 512 mega memory. And then Unix systems, those requirements are there listed there. Again, we also have customers running the product in Amazon Web Services as well as Azure environment, so you can put it into the cloud if that's something you're interested in. So we do thank you for your time. We had a lot of great questions come through, and if you think of any other questions as you look at the slides, feel free to contact us or Rohit